No sleep, no company, just you and an endless horizon of water that wants to kill you. Welcome to life as a Victorian lighthouse keeper, where your main job was preventing mass death while slowly losing your own mind. In the 1860s, Isaac Bellamy was assigned to the newly constructed Wavebreaker Lighthouse off the coast of Cornwall. Excited for the prestigious position with room and board included, Isaac soon discovered what the recruitment posters failed to mention. The room was the size of a coffin, the board was hardtack and salted meat, and the prestige meant absolutely nothing when you're 50 miles from anyone who might be impressed. The Victorian-era lighthouse keeper's day began and ended with the same thrilling activity, cleaning. Imagine spending hours polishing brass fixtures until you could see your increasingly haggard reflection, only to wake up the next morning and do it all over again because salt air tarnishes metal faster than a scandalous rumor ruins a debutante's reputation. The light must never go out. His supervisor had warned dramatically during training. Lives depend on it. No pressure, Isaac. No pressure at all. Just know that if you nod off for 15 minutes, you might be responsible for an entire ship of sailors becoming fish food. Sweet dreams. Speaking of dreams, those required actual sleep, which lighthouse keepers rarely got. The Victorian lighthouse service operated on a punishing schedule. 4 hours on, 4 hours off around the clock. Isaac's logbook entries gradually devolved from weather fair, sea calm, to day 47. I think the seagulls are plotting against me, to simply scrawled across an entire page. At least I have my books, Isaac thought optimistically during his first week. But reading by lamplight while trying to stay awake only led to hallucinations where Charles Dickens characters started giving him advice. Perhaps you should consider a career change, suggested an imaginary Oliver Twist one particularly lonely night. Anything's better than this, governor. Even chimney sweeping. The pay was another delightful aspect of lighthouse keeping. For the princely sum of £45 per annum, less than what a decent butler made, Isaac was expected to risk life and limb during storms that would make Neptune himself reach for a life jacket. Whenever massive waves crashed against the tower, sending tremors through the entire structure, Isaac would clutch his meager belongings and recite what became his personal mantra. At least I'm not a coal miner. Historical records show that in 1865 alone, 17 lighthouse keepers were washed away during storms while attempting to maintain their lights. The Trinity House, which managed British lighthouses, considered this an acceptable occupational hazard and helpfully suggested keepers should try to avoid being outdoors during inclement weather. Brilliant advice for someone whose job explicitly required checking the exterior lantern gallery during storms. Supplies arrived quarterly via boat, weather permitting, which meant lighthouse keepers became masters of rationing. Isaac once stretched a jar of jam for 7 weeks, eventually using it as both food and glue for a broken chair. When fresh vegetables ran out, approximately 3 days after supply delivery, scurvy became less a pirate's disease and more an occupational hazard. Nothing says career fulfillment like your teeth falling out while you write poetic entries about the sunset in the lighthouse log. The Victorian obsession with efficiency meant every aspect of a keeper's life was regulated. Trinity House inspectors would arrive unannounced, wearing white gloves to check for dust and carrying rulers to measure the exact distance between stored supplies. One keeper reportedly lost a month's wages because his candles were arranged at a 43-degree angle rather than the required 45 degrees. Heaven forbid the emergency candles weren't aesthetically pleasing while saving lives. Then there was the delightful issue of isolation. Before radio communication, lighthouse keepers could go months without speaking to another human being. Isaac developed an entire personality for his mop, named it Douglas, and by month 4 was having complex philosophical debates with it about whether mermaids would have fish parts on top or bottom if they evolved in reverse. You don't understand, Douglas. Isaac was once caught explaining to his mop by a surprised supply boat captain. If mermaids had fish heads and human legs, they'd be able to walk on land but would have to carry bowls of water for their heads. It's completely impractical for interspecies diplomacy. The captain requested a different delivery route shortly thereafter. Many lighthouses eventually housed multiple keepers to prevent the madness of isolation, but this created its own special hell. Imagine being trapped in a space smaller than a modest pantry with another human being who has exactly the same job, schedule, and grievances. The logbooks from dual-keeper lighthouses read like passive-aggressive roommate notes from the world's worst shared apartment. Mr. Peterson continues to clip his toenails at the dinner table. I have contemplated murder 17 times today. The light remains operational. Mr. Bellamy breathes too loudly. I have requested a transfer to a plague colony for more pleasant company. Found Mr. Peterson's secret biscuit stash. Replaced contents with seagull droppings. Anticipating reaction with only joy I have felt in months. Women weren't officially allowed to be lighthouse keepers in the Victorian era, but when keepers died, which happened with alarming frequency, their widows often took over without recognition or pay. Dora Vellington kept the Blackcliff Light operating for 3 years after her husband was swept away, receiving only posthumous acknowledgement when Trinity House finally sent a replacement keeper who was shocked to find the lighthouse immaculately maintained by someone who officially didn't exist. The Trinity House records simply noted, "Lighthouse found in acceptable condition despite extended vacancy." Dora's response, while not recorded officially, is believed to have contained language unseemly for a Victorian lady. For entertainment, keepers like Isaac were expected to maintain improving hobbies suitable for their station. Bird watching was popular until keepers realized identifying the same 3 seabird species every day for years was about as mentally stimulating as watching paint dry, which, incidentally, was another approved hobby. Isaac's logbook contains over 70 entries detailing the drying patterns of different paint types on the lighthouse interior, culminating in his breakthrough discovery that green paint dries exactly like white paint but greener. The Victorian era did bring technological improvements to lighthouses. The Fresnel lens, invented earlier but widely implemented during this period, magnified light to incredible distances. While this saved countless ships, for keepers it meant spending hours cleaning an apparatus with hundreds of intricate prisms. Drop one section, and you might as well jump into the sea yourself rather than face the wrath of Trinity House inspectors. Weather monitoring became another critical duty, requiring meticulous recording of conditions every hour. Isaac's early logs show careful notation of barometric pressure, wind direction, and temperature. By year 2, entries evolved to include rain continuing with spite-like intensity, and fog so thick it appears to have malevolent intentions. The psychological toll became most apparent in the personal notes keepers hid between official logs. Isaac's private journal, discovered decades later during lighthouse automation, contains this illuminating entry from his 3rd year of service. I have named each individual stone in the lighthouse tower. Margaret, the large limestone block near the entrance, is having a disagreement with Frederick, the granite piece 3 rows above. Their quarrel concerns the nature of existence and whether we are all just waiting for the sea to claim us. Frederick makes a compelling argument. Perhaps most ironic was that despite their crucial role in maritime safety, lighthouse keepers themselves faced constant danger with minimal safety provisions. The standard issue safety equipment consisted of a rope, often rotted from constant moisture, and advice to hold tight during storms. When Isaac reported that a section of his lighthouse's exterior gallery had broken away during a gale, Trinity House responded with a letter 6 weeks later suggesting he avoid standing on that section until repairs could be scheduled within the next 16 months. By the 1880s, technological improvements began making some aspects of lighthouse keeping less demanding, though the isolation remained. Automated oil exchangers meant keepers no longer needed to refill lamps hourly throughout the night. Isaac recorded this development with mixed feelings. The new apparatus gives me 2 additional hours of freedom each night. I have used this time to teach Douglas the mop to play chess. He cheats. What truly captures the absurdity of Victorian lighthouse keeping was the retirement plan, or rather, the complete lack of one. After dedicating decades to saving countless lives, keepers were typically discharged when their eyesight inevitably failed from years of lamp tending. Their pension, if they received one at all, barely covered room and board in the poorest sections of port towns, where they would sit in pubs telling lighthouse stories to increasingly disinterested audiences. Isaac Bellamy served 27 years at Wavebreaker Light before retiring in 1887. His final log entry reads simply, "Light operational. Duty complete." Douglas says goodbye. He settled in a small coastal village where locals knew him as that odd fellow who talks to cleaning implements and hoards lamp oil. When asked if he missed the lighthouse, he reportedly laughed for 13 straight minutes before responding, "Miss it, like one misses a perpetual toothache. But sometimes when it storms, I still wake up reaching for the lamp wick." The ultimate irony of Victorian lighthouse keeping? These men and unofficial women saved thousands of lives while slowly sacrificing their own sanity, yet received almost no recognition. Meanwhile, ship captains who merely managed to not crash thanks to lighthouse guidance were celebrated as maritime heroes. The job gradually improved over decades, but for Victorian keepers like Isaac, the only career advancement was from isolated and half-mad to fully mad, but with slightly better lamps. Perhaps the most fitting epitaph for these forgotten guardians comes from Isaac's own journal, found tucked between weather logs and supply requisitions. "They say I keep the light, but some days the light is all that keeps me." At least today's automated lighthouses don't have to polish brass while hallucinating conversations with cleaning equipment. Though if you listen carefully on stormy nights, you might just hear the echo of a keeper's voice, still arguing with his mop about the practical logistics of reverse mermaids.